Now move to questions. I'll start with myself. Recently, a major defense CEO stated that it's important to understand that we have to find a way to get along with China and that we cannot decouple from China. I understand we have a very complex economic relationship with China. Everyone's supply chain, runs through China in some sense. We're not everybody's, but a lot of major companies. But I'd be curious, since you are in the business of building weapon systems designed to sink Chinese ships and aircraft, how you think about that? How you think about that statement, and then how you think about your own supply chains and ensuring that they can withstand economic coercion from the Chinese Communist Party. Maybe Mr. Takelet, we'll start with you.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. I'm in the camp that believes that China is competing aggressively against the United States and our allies. They have a different system than we do. They drive a dual circulation economy, which intends to make us more dependent on them and them less dependent on us. And they practice civil-military fusion, which basically demands and commands the commercial industries in China to devote their technologies and pipeline their capabilities into their PLA, People's Liberation Army. That's who we're competing with, and they're using all the means they can to drive that competition. I think we want to use and preserve our system, but also to basically marshal all of American industry, from startups to the biggest aerospace companies in the world and the biggest technology companies in the world that are on our side, so to speak, to get together and face this soberly and face it together in a way that government can lead, but it can't create all the solutions. So we want to work with all of industry in our system to be able to compete effectively with what's going on in China and Russia and other countries.
Mr. Schimpf, your thoughts on getting along with China and defense decoupling from China?
The challenge with the U.S. supply base is that it's often very fractured, and when you look at where a lot of the components and pieces come from, they're frequently made by small-sized companies, many of whom are the owners are entering the age of retirement. So the U.S. industrial base needs active development, active investment, and there are significant capabilities that do exist frequently in more of the commercial manufacturing world, but those have often not been what's supplying technology to the defense base. Our view has been to go above and beyond on removing China from the supply chain. We have, basically eliminated nearly every part possible that we can get away from, gone above and beyond to source everything we can from U.S. and allied manufacturing sources. But it's a significant challenge, and often the capacity within the U.S. does not exist. And this has taken significant investment on our part to either bring things in-house or find and invest in those partners that can scale with what is needed. This is an area where I think the Department and Congress can have a significant positive impact. They can take advantage of things like DPA to invest in technologies, invest in capacity that needs to exist to support what we need to do. They can take advantage of just buying and supporting the industrial base through production to stimulate and activate what needs to exist. But it's not something that will happen on its own. It will require active investment and active steering to get the U.S. to the point that we have restored the industrial capacity that we've essentially outsourced over the last several decades.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Jenkins. Is your microphone on?
Sorry. I'd agree with that. I'd like to call out China's very successful use of leveraging commercial, civilian, and transport technologies in military applications. I think the U.S. needs to do a much better job of enhancing and embracing civilian and commercial technologies in the defense realm. I'll also point out, you mentioned weapons. I think it's a lot more than just weapons. It's an information war as well. Saudin doesn't weaponize platforms at this stage, but we do collect critical ISR data. So I think people often overlook the need for precision, accurate, truthful data in order to inform decisions we make with weapons.
I appreciate that. I have more questions I hope to get to in a second round. I just want to comment, having just done a war game exercise in New York with major asset managers and CEOs of various banks and the other committee I work on, the Select Committee on China, the big takeaway, we examined a 2028 Taiwan scenario, was that as difficult as these questions of how to selectively decouple, and reasonable people can argue about where to draw the line for decoupling, as difficult as those decisions are right now, politically, practically, financially, if we don't do some version of that, our options are extremely limited if we find ourselves in a war with China in 5 years. And they dominate the production of the processing of critical minerals, the production of life-saving drugs. Take your pick of things they could threaten to cut off and bring us to our knees, as they have threatened to cut off the export of APIs in the early parts of the pandemic. So figuring out how to decouple in a smart and selective way, I would argue, is essential for the health of our defense industrial base as well as our country by extension. I've gone over my time.